Welcome to session 2 on the matter of purgatory or what? I know it's a very strange title, but as you follow along with me, I hope that it will make some sense, okay? I broke off the last session by pronouncing a profound discovery due to a justifiable and apparently valid concern among the people in the 12 to 1500 AD, primarily in the environment of Roman Catholicism, where they believed people had faith, but they couldn't see them maturing and developing into mature believers that would be fit, for example, fit for heaven. So slowly, this idea, of course, biblically, the word purgatory is not a biblical word, but somehow or other they came up with that word to connotate a place where you would be matured or brought to maturity or developed so that you would be fit for heaven. That's the general idea. So I have some things here that I want to read to you in this session. I'll probably just cover these in this brief session, and then we'll move on to the next session at another time. But I will read these to you. This was a kind of a very interesting connection for me because there's not a lot available currently. No one is really touching it that much in terms of what will be the result if a believer isn't matured when the Lord comes, or they die and go to be with the Lord, and then the Lord comes back and we're at the bema and all those things. So let me read this to you. I've just discovered this recently in my searches, and it kind of filled some holes for me in trying to understand the history of this concern in a very general way, okay? The Council of Trent in 1545 to 1563 formally defined Catholic doctrine on the purgatory, affirming it as a state of purification after death for those dying in God's grace. So they're saying these are believers in their mind. They're dying in God's grace, but not yet perfectly holy. So some people have said to me over the years, well, they're paying money and they're buying indulgences to get them out of hell. That's actually not definitively what this is about. They're saying that these people were in the grace of God, but yet not perfectly holy. And so this place was a place for them to be in their articulation restored, refreshed, matured kind of idea. Where souls are cleansed by fire and aided by prayers and masses, sacrifice of the altar from the living, while also warning against speculative, unedifying teachings about its nature, cautions there. This decree solidified purgatory as a core Catholic belief, a response to Protestant challenges, emphasizing its role in preparing souls for heaven and the Church's duty to pray for the dead. This, after several centuries of practical involvement. They didn't make it a doctrine in the Catholic dogma. They had started out developing it in around 1200 A.D. So there was around a 300-year period where they were trying to see, can we adopt this? Can we affirm this as a very valid thing? And it wasn't until in the 1545 to 1563 era that it was actually made Catholic dogma. Now, the reason that this caught my attention was because they were concerned. Yes, you have the grace of God in their context, right? Probably by baptism or things like that. But in addition to that, they didn't see the life transformation and the maturity as a Christian person, however they measured it. So therefore, how is this going to happen? So they said this is something after death to get us ready, get the people ready for heaven. Well, that was an interesting kind of touch there. And then there was a couple of other things that I downloaded from AI. I punched in a question about what was the purpose and goal of purgatory in the Catholic Church. And this is what I got from AI. Theological logic. Early Christian thinkers grappled with the apparent inconsistency between God's perfect justice and the reality that most people die with minor or venial sins and imperfections, yet are presumed to be saved, not eternally damned. The idea emerged that nothing impure can enter into heaven, and they quote Revelation 21:27, leading to the conclusion that a process of post-mortem purification was necessary for these souls to achieve the holiness required for the afterlife. Very interesting. The next point on that was, again from AI, scriptural interpretation. While the word purgatory does not appear in the Bible, certain passages were interpreted by church fathers as supporting a process of temporary purifying punishment or an intermediate state. In essence, wrestling with the remarkably similar question which popped out to me, over which I wrestled for over 45 years. The question again being, if a believer comes to Christ, they truly born again, trusted in Christ, and yet maybe they die early in their life, or the Lord would return and they were immature. What would be God's plan then for that practical, actual maturing? We know that in positional we have been made this way, but the Lord is working on us for the completion so that we would actually be to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ in reality, not just positionally, scripturally. So I found that kind of fascinating that this was being a struggle in people's thinking in many, well, centuries ago, 1200 AD and on. So I'll stop this here and let you soak this concept in before we can go on to the next one, which will develop some of the meat of the point that I'm trying to make, okay? Lord bless you.